Welcome everyone, I'm the Depressed Eeyore, and this is Arkham Horror, the card game. Been trying to start a new campaign, but just keep hitting roadblock after roadblock, or just mistakes that require me to kind of scrap more than I care to scrap. So this is my attempt to run another campaign, though for you guys there's no gap between any of these. I've been trying to get a Clover Jenny Barnes to work, so I'm going to be trying that for this playthrough. The difficulty was trying to find a campaign that I would like to actually play with Jenny, because I didn't exactly want to do any of the standard campaigns that I've done before already, for a few reasons, because either I've done them a lot or they're just not a good fit for Jenny. And I've been dabbling with a few custom campaigns, but some of the ones I've attempted don't really work well with Jenny either. Like I said, the biggest issue with Jenny, of course, is just her stat line is just abysmal, and having threes and everything kind of just makes it so she kind of sucks at everything, even on easy difficulty. I did mess around with a combat Jenny again on my own, and it went okay until I ran out of ammo and or charges. But I think I might have an idea to get one of those off the ground that focuses more on one-handed weapons rather than two hands. But right now, I have yet to actually get a Clover Jenny to get off the ground. So this will, like I said, this will be my attempt to do that. So we're going to be running Dark Matter, which is a fan-made campaign. I think it's made by Axolotl. I believe it's who does that one. Yep, Axolotl. I have done a full playthrough of it, though I definitely messed up the scanning mechanic on my attempt to play through. But it was overall a pretty good campaign. So I'm hoping Jenny will do okay in this. You could probably tell what my other character is going to be because I have that card in my hand, but I am going to be bringing Diana Stanley as my other character. She'll be the lead investigator and hopefully be able to back up Jenny. I tried to find characters. I tried to find a thug that didn't use the Great Work. I mean, granted, I don't have to use the Great Work, but I like to use anything that gives me extra XP. Jenny can use both Karen's Obel and Great Work, so I have to pick another character that generally doesn't use either of those. But my attempts at doing that leaves me kind of, my options end up being just like Marion, Daniela, and then various survivors as my options. So after a few attempts, I've decided to go ahead and just try Diana. Also, Diana is just kind of fun to play, and with the new Drowned City cards, there's definitely more options for her as far as canceling is concerned, which will be kind of fun to play around with. So, with all that said and done, before we start, I will go ahead and do their weakness. We're going to go ahead and just set it up over here. Anyone who's not familiar, if I decide to replace a weakness, I will replace all weaknesses. So if I get a good weakness and a bad weakness, and I need to redraw, I'll redraw both of them. So, start with that. Discard all your resources. Okay, and then the other one is multiplayer only is self-centered. You know what? We'll take it. So Diana's going to have Paranoia, which makes you lose all your resources. Thankfully, that was not on Jenny. And then self-centered is generally okay. Self-centered can actually be kind of devious, because it's like, usually you don't have to worry about it, because you usually don't commit to others. You don't often have opportunities to commit to other people's skill checks. Though nowadays, with the expanded card pool and having various skills that actually can be committed from a distance, this can actually become a little bit more... It may come into play more often than you may actually think. Yeah, so it also affects things like you can't heal each other and things like that. So it is something to be you need to be careful about. All right, let's go ahead and go over Diana. So Diana's pretty straightforward. She's a redeemed cultist, Silver Twilight. The traits do matter because Drowned City introduced specialist cards. 1 willpower and then 3s with the rest of the stats. She gets +1 willpower for every card in her basement. And then as a reaction, after she cancels ignores, she can put a card in the basement as long as she has less than 5 underneath her. And when she does that, she draws a card and gains a resource. And that effect is limited per phase, which is why there's all these little tick marks on the side, which will be helpful for keeping track of that. Elder Sign is great. It just passes the test, and you can grab a card from beneath her and put it back in your hand. And in most cases, it's probably a good cancel card you probably want back in your hand anyway to reuse. For anyone to have seen me play her Diana a few times, I generally her deck building is Mystic 0 to 5, Guardian 0 to 2, and the big thing is I tend to focus a lot more on the Guardian side. The idea, I guess, is you're supposed to use the Guardian stuff to kind of start off with as you put stuff in the basement, and then switch over to your Mystic spells to take advantage of your 6 willpower. I don't play that way. Instead, I just treat her as a Guardian that has reduced access to her own cards and then has a lot of cancel effects. So that's going to be the focus for this. What's nice about this is the disadvantage, of course, is you're relying on your 3 combat rather than your ever-increasing willpower. But the nice thing is you don't have to worry about a situation where you start with all your spells but can't really use them, or start with all your or reach a situation where you get to high willpower and don't actually have any of your spells in your hand type situation. As for the deck itself, there are a few new changes. Obviously, Spectral Shield's been added in. I don't have a lot of things that have charges because, like I mentioned, I don't really rely on Mystic spells, but I do get Living Ink does use charges, as does Enchanted Blade. So that is an option. But even without those charges, I would still put this in Diana's deck because it's fast, cost 1, and it cancels a damage and or horror even when there's no charges on it. And now I think the way it works is I think you can't put it in the basement afterwards. Let me check that again. Okay, so yeah, the confusion with this card, there was, at least in Arkham DB, there was some stuff about technically, so you have to do the entire forced effect, which means you do have to, if you do have charges, you have to spend them. There were some people who thought maybe that you can possibly use Diana's ability to put this in the basement before that effect triggers, but otherwise everything else is still the same. Even if you have no charges, you can still put this in your basement, so that's fine. That was not the issue I was running into. So yeah, like I said, it's a 1-cost fast, and it pays for itself and gets you a card back. So it's pretty safe to use. The only time it can be a little iffy is it could eat up your charges in Living Ink or Enchanted Blade. But in both cases, I would almost prefer it. So it's not the end of the world. Speaking of Enchanted Blade, our weapons, Survival Knives, Enchanted Blades, and we got some 45 automatics. Obviously, we do have some Wolf Mask to try to make up for her low combat stat, as well as the Living Inks. I do have the Living Ink set for increasing combat right now, and we'll expand from there. We, of course, also have the Twilight Blade, which we don't really use as a weapon. We just use that to kind of do the basement stuff, which with the Twilight Blade stuff, let's see. Yeah, so Twilight Blade actually works really well with Spectral Shield as well. It's essentially like a delay inevitable almost. So yeah, this thing can just perpetually keep her alive, which is pretty neat. We do have a number of cards that kind of help with our limited stat pool. So we got Overpowers, of course, Vicious Blows, Take the Initiatives, and I think we got, Defiance? Yep, Defiance for dealing with symbols. In easy difficulty, which is what I play at, the symbols tend to matter much more than the standard just minus number tokens. Of course, I have all the stuff that does canceling. We got Deny Existences, Border Protections, some dodges, Delay the Inevitables. The 45 automatic does get a cancel if you do get it to level 2, though it's not really one you tend to use. I do have some backpacks. I do plan on eventually filtering the Living Inks to be an arcane slot, so the backpacks will be able to work on their own. So B-Cops and backpacks are probably going to be the first things I upgrade, just to kind of maximize the amount of consistency and damage I have for Diana here. We do have, of course, emergency cash for some resources as necessary, which we're probably going to need a lot more than I probably would like because of paranoia, but it is what it is. Out of anyone, Diana getting hit with paranoia is not necessarily the end of the world. At least that's what I think. Anyway, enough rambling about Diana. Let's talk about Jenny. So Jenny has 3s in all of her stats. She is a drifter, which does matter. That does give her access to that one event card that lets you pick 2 of 4 options, which tends to be really good, especially as a clover. She just gets extra resources during upkeep, and then her Elder Sign is just passing a test. She does have 8/7 soak, which is not bad. She does have, in the thick of it, she'll be starting with 2 physical trauma. Oh, speaking of starting with stuff, the great work is, of course, going to be on Jenny Barnes. I would usually take the great work on Diana, but obviously, unfortunately, the great work is a unique card, so you can only have 1 of them out. Diana does have Down the Rabbit Hole. Most of the stuff that is in Diana's deck is something that can be upgraded. Anyway, speaking of, Jenny does have Down the Rabbit Hole as well. Karen's Obol, great work. Karen's Obol is being paid with in the thick of it. We do have Honed Instinct as just something to upgrade if I need to. And then the remaining experience I have is put into easy marks. And then for the 5 splash cards that are of any color, 2 of them have been spent on the Down the Rabbit Hole and great work. 1 is spent on a magnifying glass, and then for anyone that's familiar with my videos, I don't play with taboo list, but I do try to restrict myself from using certain cards like Dr. Milan. For a while I stopped using Machete. I never really used Double or Nothing, things like that. But in the case of Jenny, I feel like Dr. Milan is actually a really interesting fit for Jenny because she's a big money character that has access to Dr. Milan, and Dr. Milan's all about getting you money for doing your job, and it gives you +1 book. So it's just another source for cash, which is great for Jenny. Jenny's exclusives, she usually gets the 45 automatics, which are garbage, and then she gets, Search for Izzy, which is also terrible. But she does have an alternate version of her exclusives, which is Green Man Medallion, which is just a big XP farming item. And then the Sacrificial Beast, which is pretty rough for Jenny because it kind of disables everything she has as far as money is concerned. But it's far more manageable than freaking Search for Izzy. So that's why I tend to play with them. Anyway, I'm going with no skills in this deck because I plan on getting Gias in the future, which will make her have all 4s in our stats, which will be kind of interesting. I do have Streetwise, but level 0, which is going to be upgraded to its 3rd level version as soon as possible, which will open up a deck slot for us. Leather Jacket is just a placeholder for Stylish Coat. We have lockpicks for doing some investigating with. Unfortunately, with our stat line, lockpicks aren't that good either, but it's better than nothing. It'll go a lot better with Gias in the future. As for dealing with enemies, we have Backstabs, Breaking and Enterings, and Bomb Rushes. We also have You Handled This ones. And then we also, from John Steady, there's You've Had Worse, which is really pretty good. It lets you, it can be played on yourself or an investigator at your location or a connecting location in response to being dealt damage or horror. And then that investigator can spend 3 resources to cancel that much damage and or horror. Now, I mentioned before about the self-centered. Self-centered will prevent me from using this on other people, which isn't the end of the world. Diana probably won't need it. But this is actually really good because it gives like soak for rogues, and rogues don't exactly have the best soak, at least not in their color. So it also has really good commits. It has 2 agility and then 1 willpower for its commit. Anyway, besides all of that, the rest of it's mostly just money-making stuff. We got Lone Wolves. Scout ahead for mobility, well connected to take advantage of our money if we're not using Grey Man Medallion. Honed Instinct is just for some extra actions. Intel Report, we can use our extra money to get clues a little bit easier. I tend to not play the hoarder type of big money. I rather use my money for stuff, so that's going to be the focus here, is just take advantage of the 2 cost events that she has access to. We do have a couple of pilfers. For now, they're kind of a placeholder, but once we get Streetwise up and running, it'll become a little bit more stable to use because I don't really have a lot of ways to buff up my foot right now. Anyway, that's pretty much it as far as the decks are concerned. Hopefully they do somewhat okay, but we'll see. In any case, let's go ahead and talk about Dark Matter. All right. Introduction. Let's see. In space, no one can hear you scream. He mentioned the establishment of the dynasty in Carcosa, the lakes which connected Hastur, Aldebaran, and the mystery of Hyades. He spoke of Casilda and Camilla, and sounded the cloudy depths of Dim and the Lake of Holly. All right. This campaign is personally, I think this is a campaign you should play after playing Path of Carcosa, just for reasons. But besides that, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it actually says, yeah, so it even tells you here, it recommends that you play Path of Carcosa. We will be playing it on easy difficulty, which just has -2s, though we do start with 2 skulls and 2 cultists in the beginning. The scan mechanic. So this is kind of like Explore, but a lot less painful. The way this, so the scanning rules are much like Explore, are kind of scenario specific as far as the rules are concerned. But it's usually a situation where you can take a scan action and you'll be searching based off your current location, based off what's on the scan deck. Usually it's going to be checking for symbols, and you just have to match those symbols. If you do, you successfully scan, in which case you flip it over and resolve whatever it is. If it doesn't match, you just keep cycling until you find something that does, or you've gone through the entire deck. Like it mentions, it's usually in reference to your location, but sometimes it doesn't. Here's an example of scannable cards. You can see that there's symbols, so you'll try to match those symbols down there. All right. Let's see. Oh, actually, you don't even need to match both of them. You just need to match a symbol for it, and that should be successful. But yeah, that was I'm pretty sure I messed that up pretty bad on my first playthrough. Memories. This campaign also refers to memories. Every character will have a memory ticker that they're keeping track of. And memories are both good and bad in this campaign. So if you have a lot of memories, it can be very, very dangerous, but it can also be very helpful depending on the situation. It does have the alert, which is just retaliate for evading. And then we'll go ahead and read the prologue. You turn over the folded program in your hand, reading it for what seems like the 100th time. Miskatonic Playhouse presents The King in Yellow. It reads, a special one-night engagement of Arkham's very own Ward Theatre, an irresistible drama in 2 acts. Production staged and directed by Nigel Ingram. The cast is a small ensemble with one unattributed credit at the end, The Stranger. To have such a highly anticipated play come to Arkham all the way from Paris is a noteworthy event, even if it is just for one night. For weeks leading up to the show, it was the talk of the town. It seems so unassuming, and yet you have evidence something sinister is at work. It started with the disappearance of one of the stagehands at the theater, a boy of only 17 who missed rehearsal one night and was never seen again. Then, less than 2 weeks before the performance, there was the musician whose corpse was found with a gun in its mouth. Perhaps most chilling was the crazed man the coppers had picked up in Independence Square who had been ranting and raving about the king's return. He was brought to Arkham Asylum, and you were surprised to discover that he was not alone in his delusions. Finding these events suspicious, you and your companions have delved deeper into the matter. Although no connection can be proven, these weren't the only strange events surrounding the up-and-coming play. Instances of suicide and madness have followed in its wake, and you are determined to discover why. The lights in the auditorium dim, and a spotlight shines on the stage. What unfolds is not quite what you expected. Slow-paced and monotonous, the first act of The King in Yellow is a tedious bore. The setting and characters are compelling, but the meandering and nonsensical story does little to entertain or inform. You begin to wonder whether the dreadful events surrounding The King in Yellow aren't connected after all. Perhaps it was just your overactive imagination. How could such a trivial, unassuming show cause such pandemonium? You're surprised when the first act closes without any rising action or revelation. The lights rise for the intermission, and you consider leaving early, stifling a yawn. Before you're able to decide, however, you find yourself drifting to sleep. And with that, we will start the first scenario next time. So yeah, it's almost word for word the same prologue as Path of Carcosa. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and call it here. I am the Depressed Hero. This was Arkham Horror, the card game, with Diana Stanley and Jenny Barnes doing Dark Matter. I will see you guys next time.